My name is Emily Carter, and I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Denver, Colorado, with my 12-year-old son Liam. Life had never been easy for us, but we always managed to find joy in the little things. Liam was my entire world. I had raised him alone since he was just a baby after his father walked out, leaving me to figure out everything on my own. For years, I juggled two jobs, late night shifts, bills that never seemed to end, and the pressure of being both mom and dad. But despite it all, Liam grew up to be the sweetest boy anyone could imagine, kind, gentle, and with a heart so big it constantly amazed me. It was one of those nights when exhaustion had completely taken over my body. I had been working late hours at the diner, and by the time I got home, I barely managed to shower and fall into bed. My mind was so tired that I didn't even hear the rain tapping softly against the window or the creaks of the old wooden house settling in the dark. All I remember was drifting into a heavy sleep, holding on to the thought that tomorrow, somehow, things would be better. I didn't know how long I had been asleep when I felt something so light, so gentle, that it stirred me awake. At first, I thought it was just a dream, the kind you barely register in your half-asleep state. But then I opened my eyes and saw a small figure standing beside my bed. It was Liam. His eyes were wide, his little hands trembling as he reached out toward me. My first thought was that something terrible had happened. "Mom," he whispered, his voice shaky. I didn't mean to wake you." My heart skipped a beat. I pushed myself up quickly, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. "Liam? Honey, what's wrong? Why are you up so late?" He hesitated, his face pale in the dim glow of the night light across the hall. And then, to my shock, he reached for me and pressed his hand against my chest, right over my heart. For a moment, I froze, not because it hurt, but because I didn't understand what he was doing. He stood there, eyes glistening with unshed tears, and whispered, "I just wanted to make sure your heart was still beating." Those words hit me harder than anything else could have. My throat tightened. I gently took his hand in mine, feeling how cold and small it was. "Sweetheart, why would you think my heart wouldn't be beating?" Tears began streaming down his cheeks. "Because you've been so tired lately. You always look sad when you think I'm not watching. I heard you crying in the kitchen last night when you thought I was asleep. I was scared that one day I might wake up and you wouldn't be here anymore." In that moment, everything inside me shattered. My son, my brave little boy who never complained, had been carrying fears I hadn't even realized I'd placed on him. I pulled him into my arms, hugging him tightly as if I could erase all of his worries with just the strength of my embrace. He buried his face into my chest, sobbing softly, and I whispered into his hair, "Oh, Liam, I'm so sorry. I didn't know you felt this way. I promise you, I'm not going anywhere. I'm right here and I'm going to be okay." But as I held him, I also realized he wasn't wrong. I had been crying at night, overwhelmed by bills, loneliness, and the crushing weight of responsibility. I had thought I was hiding it well. But children always see more than we think. Liam had noticed everything, and instead of sharing his fears, he kept them inside until they grew too big for him to handle. That night, standing in my room while I was half asleep, he had finally let them out. We sat together on my bed for what felt like hours. I stroked his hair as he told me everything he had been holding back. How he worried when I skipped meals so he could eat more. How he pretended not to hear me arguing with debt collectors on the phone. How he sometimes dreamed of his father coming back, not because he missed him, but because he thought maybe then I wouldn't have to do everything alone. His honesty cut through me, each word like a reminder of how much he noticed and how deeply he cared. I told him the truth that night, too. I told him that yes, life was hard, and yes, sometimes I felt like breaking down. But I also told him how strong he made me, how every smile of his, every silly joke, every hug kept me going when I wanted to give up. "You're my reason, Liam," I said, holding his face in my hands. "You're the reason I fight so hard. Don't ever think for a second that I would leave you. I will always be here." He finally smiled, though his eyes were still wet. "Promise?" "I promise," I said firmly, sealing it with another hug. That night changed something in both of us. It was as if the wall of silence we had unknowingly built between us came crumbling down. From then on, Liam and I talked more openly. When he felt scared or worried, he came to me instead of hiding it. And when I felt overwhelmed, I learned to share it with him in ways he could understand without making him feel like the weight of the world was on his shoulders. In the days that followed, I began making small but important changes. I cut back on extra shifts when I could, choosing instead to spend evenings with Liam. We cooked dinner together, played board games, and sometimes just sat on the porch watching the stars. One night, while sipping hot cocoa, he looked at me and said, "You know, Mom, your heart sounds really strong when I listen to it." I laughed, but I also realized what he meant. He didn't just mean the literal beating of my heart. He meant that he could feel my strength again. Weeks turned into months, and the bond between us only grew. I still had struggles, still had nights when I cried quietly. But now Liam knew he didn't have to fear my silence. And I knew that even when life felt impossible, I was not alone. My son had shown me that. Looking back on that night, I often think about how something as simple as a child's touch over my heart could reveal so much truth. Liam's innocence had uncovered my hidden pain, but it had also healed me. He reminded me that even when we feel like we have to carry everything ourselves, love has a way of finding us and making us stronger. So yes, my son came into my room while I was sleeping, and what he did shocked me. But it wasn't a bad kind of shock. It was the kind that woke me up to what truly mattered. It was the kind of moment that changes everything forever. And every time I hold him close, I remember the promise I made that night, that no matter how hard life gets, I will always be here with my heart beating strong, not just for me, but for him.